Sean and Rebecca are going to be talking to us, and I think one of them is going to share a screen. Oh, perfect. All right, good luck.
I'm going to just put the slides in the chat again. I know some folks joined us after I did it the first time, but in case you want a copy of the slides, we do have some additional slides that we're not going to cover in our shorter session today. So if you want more detailed info, they're in the slides.
Oops. Sorry, I thought I had it in slideshow mode there.
All right. So we're just going to talk today about some of the Title II updates, and we'll talk a little bit what Title II is in just a moment. I'm Rebecca Mushtare. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Art and Design and the Associate Dean of Graduate Studies. Sean?
Hi, I'm Sean Moriarty, Chief Technology Officer at SUNY Oswego, a man in his mid-60s with graying hair and a gray beard.
All right. So I'm going to go to the next slide, Sean.
Yeah. Whoops, I want too many. There.
So today we're going to talk a little bit about Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA. And Title II in particular is focused on state and local governments, which SUNY falls under. And that particular Title II in particular focuses on the idea that services, programs, and activities need to be accessible to people with disabilities. And that is really kind of everything that we do at the institution for the public, for students, for faculty, staff, et cetera. So it really covers everything that's happening at our institution. And that does include online activities as well as things that happen in our like physical spaces. We move on to the next slide. So the new rule that we want to talk about was adopted in April of 2024. And that really talked specifically about some specifications around the digital aspects of this rule, or how it impacts digital spaces, virtual spaces, digital content. And in particular, web content and mobile applications, and how they need to be accessible for people with disabilities. These things were already covered by Title II of the ADA, but it was more explicit about what specific guidelines need to be followed and where there may be exceptions. So there is a fact sheet that does like lay out all of the details of this particular update to the ADA. And this update, this fact sheet is kind of in more plain language than the law itself. So I'm going to put that in the chat, and there's a link in this slide deck. So anyone that wants that can reach out to us or click it in the chat. I'm going to switch to the next slide, Sean.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
Oops, one too many. There we go.
And so the new rule is a paradigm shift for the law, and as like a lot of government agencies are thinking, but I would say that it's not a paradigm shift for our institution, because it really aligns with the work that we've been doing in our accessibility work on our campus, and the way that our work group on accessibility practices and our digital accessibility steering committee has been working, and our faculty accessibility fellows have been working. So this is the direction that we've been kind of rowing this whole time. But the way that the new rule really is getting institutions to think is that we want to be designing for inclusivity from the start, rather than kind of putting accommodations in at the end. That doesn't mean we're not still going to do accommodations, because some people will need accommodations still, but it's really a proactive approach, trying to make sure that accessibility is in place so that most people will have access without needing to disclose that they have a disability and without having to request additional things. That said, not all people's needs will be covered when full accessibility practices are followed. So accommodations will still complement that, but it will reduce the need for people to have to request accommodations. And that's really similar to kind of the accessibility practices and things that are already in place for like building codes and that kind of thing. And so the specific accessibility guidelines that are in place are the WCAG standards, and that's the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, specifically the AA standard under the 2.1 standard. These are all the same ones that we've been encouraging folks to be following here. I think that Sean and I would encourage everyone to follow the most updated standards that there actually are, which are the WCAG 2.2, because at some point this will again get updated and they'll want us to be following the most current standards. So I would encourage everyone to be kind of following the most up-to-date standards when it's possible. And these are, this applies to everyone in SUNY, faculty, staff, students, and public visitors. And when we're thinking about content, it really applies to all of our digital content. And I'll pass it over to Sean to provide some more detail.
Okay, so one of the things to know off the bat is like, when does this take place? And so there's actually two deadlines, and the deadline is based on the population that you draw from. So large entities, large institutions drawing from population of 50,000 or more is April 2026. And since Oswego draws from the entire state, all the comprehensives do in this case, we're all under the deadline of April 2026. So if you draw from a population of less than 50,000, you have an additional year. So that might be some of the community colleges. Some of the community colleges will still be from April 2026 when you think of someone like Monroe or Onondaga, who, you know, take on a major city, and those in Long Island. So just if you're talking to other people and they say, oh, we don't have to do it till April 2027, they're probably coming from a small community college. We are April 2026. I already went ahead to that one. So it says it right there on that slide. Sorry. So what does it include? It includes, you know, really everything. What we're used to is like what faculty generate, but it also includes the things that students generate. Let me just see. Yeah. All the digital platforms. So the learning management system, which the content that's created inside there. Some of the student content. If the student is creating content that's shared with other individuals, then it needs to be covered. All of our websites need to be covered. Something that we haven't really necessarily focused on a lot, I think, is the mobile apps in terms of how it's covered. Our student information system is going to have to be covered as well. And basically you can see the intent is to cover everything. That would also include things like email communications. Now, one-to-one communication is one thing, but when we're talking about email communications, we're talking about if somebody's sending something out to an audience. So I think of like the provost sending out emails. Those need to be compliant. I think I see Gwen here, notes that go out from faculty assembly need to be accessible as they go out, and the attachments that are included inside of them. HR documentation and processes and portals. So a lot of those would be public facing. And when we think of people applying for jobs from outside institutions, those need to be fully accessible and follow the WCAG guidelines. websites for providing services. So this would include like ticketing that we do, selling tickets to events, hockey games, the plays, the basketball games, all of our athletic events. And then it would also include the the electronic forms that we're creating. And the intent is that they would all be accessible and meet all the guidelines. So really, it is everything. So there are some exceptions, and we don't really want to focus too much on the exceptions. But if there is archived and old content that is set aside, that doesn't need to be brought up to speed. So pre-existing conventional electronic documents. So some of these forms, if they're historic and we're not using them, then they don't need to be brought up to the WCAG standards, as long as they're clearly in an archived area of the website. But similar to if you were to start doing a renovation in your house, if you go and change any of the content on any of those web pages, they need to be brought up to code. The house needs to be brought up to code and the websites need to be brought up to code. So that would mean that you would need to go, anytime you go and touch a document, it's going to need to be brought up to the standard of that you're using. So there are some exceptions with third-party content, and that would be when we buy a service from other individuals. If it's clearly their materials, that's one thing. But most of the materials actually that we utilize on campus, we brand it with our own. So when it's branded like that, it needs to meet our standards.
Like as soon as it's embedded into our stuff, then it has to be.
And almost everything is individualized documents that are password protected. There's some exceptions there. And then pre-existing social media posts. So I will mention, since we talked about pre-existing social media posts, they can be, we don't need to go and necessarily go and change them, but existing in new social media posts all have to be accessible and including meet the guidelines with all the alt text, and whatever we put inside there needs to go and meet it. And we do have a lot of social media posts that we do on campus.
And that would include things that are coming from kind of official student clubs and organizations, as well as departments and things that would be kind of official communication from the school.
There we go. Resources.
Yeah, so we do have a number of resources to help folks and support folks in the work that they're doing that does need to be accessible, that we want to remind folks about, because we have been doing accessibility work on campus for quite a long time. So we do have our accessibility website that you don't want to forget about. So that's oswego.edu/accessibility, where all the resources that we're going to mention are largely linked to. There is our course that we've been piloting, and we'll have a pilot again this spring, so you can watch for information about that, which is Access: A Quest Towards Inclusion. So there'll be another pilot running again this spring for people that want to get up to speed on all things accessibility. And that was supported with an IITG grant. We have, all of SUNY has access to DQ, which is a platform where they really keep up on all of things like Microsoft Word and all the Adobe software and web software, all of the most current versions of software, and how to follow the accessibility practices in those software. So we have access to really great training through DQ to stay up to date on that. And so we encourage everyone to use that platform. Our Access: A Quest Toward Inclusion course does take advantage of DQ and the training that's available in there. What's really great is that there is a kind of quick up to speed courses that are really quick to complete. and are at a really baseline level, but then there's also a lot of level up opportunities as well. So once you have kind of baseline information, then there are courses to help you do more complicated things as well. There is also some great SUNY online UDL offerings that are both synchronous and asynchronous that you can take advantage of, as well as a huge archive of webinars. We have all of our CELT workshops that we offer on a regular basis that the work group offers through our breakouts, like today's session, that we've been offering. And there's a series of workshops that, look for accessibility in the giant list of offerings for this winter, but there's, we'll also have things in the spring, as we always do. And then there's also built-in tools, accessibility checkers in the software that you're probably already using. So for example, the institution has purchased Grackle, which is a checker that is available in our Google software, and you can find that under extensions, and then you can find Grackle. Thanks, Kate. That Thursday, January 23rd, which is a week from today, is our accessibility workshops, and Kate and Emily are putting in the whole list for us. So thank you. Microsoft has built-in accessibility checkers in all of their platforms, and you can find that usually under the review tab in the ribbon in those software. And then in our learning management system, you can use Ally, which is the accessibility checker there. So we have checkers that are available on a regular basis, in the platforms that we have access to. Sean, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
That's better. Okay. I was just going to say, yeah, a lot of the, all of our accessibility workshops are next Thursday morning, and Kate and Emily pointed that out. And really, you just need to learn a small set of skills to move forward and to go into work on that. So we wonder and have considerations like, how will you work to go and create content and support students and work to learn more? If the people have questions, comments, concerns.
This is a 20-minute session, but we do have a couple minutes for questions.
Yeah, we have a few minutes left. We have 2-3 minutes before Ramin in John's place cuts us off.
Sean and Rebecca, I do have a question.
Sure.
You mentioned ticketing software needs to be accessible, but how about like the EMS templates or Laker Life, which is the software used by student engagement?
Yes.
All of that would need to be accessible as well.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, that was my hunch. Thank you for confirming.
Yeah. So yeah, it really does pretty much cover everything as we move forward. So, we've been doing a lot in terms of preparing for those kinds of things and looking at the accessibility. Procurement, as you know, Holly, on almost anything we buy is difficult right now, but this will be an additional item that we'll need to go and to secure to ensure the accessibility.
There's a comment in the chat about like kind of student generated content, and the key would be student generated content when students are sharing work with each other or to the public. So the exception to that would be if they're just submitting it to the instructor and the instructor doesn't need it to be accessible. But one thing instructors might think about is teaching students how to make things accessible and building that into things, into their course instruction, just like they might teach, styles like MLA and APA, and building that into something that might be a graded component, because it's a skill that they're going to need in the workforce as well. So that might be something to think about moving forward.
Yeah, and then Kristen asked, the change in the scope of what needs to be accessible. Are we looking at changes in terms of what is expected for things we are already focusing on? I would say there's really not a change necessarily in the focus, but as you mentioned, the scope and the number of people that need to be involved, I think we're better positioned than most because we've had so many people go through the accessibility fellowship and we have a wide variety of knowledge, but I think we need to go into focus a little bit more on some of these items and make sure that people are aware and have the skills to go and to do what's needed to be done, including how we're going to go and educate our students in these cases. I don't know. Do you want to add anything to that, Rebecca?
Nope, but I do see Ramin ready to tell us that it's 9:20.
I figured
Alrighty.
my physical presence in front will be meaningful.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Good job.
Oh, thank you. 20 minutes. Boom, like that.
Perfect. Helpful.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks, Rebecca. Talk to you later.